2:30 a.m. Unable to sleep, Brenton climbed out of bed and built a spliff. His eyes felt heavy and he had developed a sniff. He switched on his stereo and Frankie Paul's Worries in the Dance played on a low volume. Rolling his joint carefully, he reflected on the day's events. He sniffed again. They bought Brianna a car, he raged inside. I felt like a fucking pauper with my card and 200 notes. Why didn't Juliet tell me she was buying a car? Why should she tell me? Why can't I deal with that? Clayton. He looked so happy with himself. Fuck him. I want him to disappear, vanish. Couldn't get out of their place quick enough. Not gonna go there for a while. Fuck it. Finished with wrapping his spliff, he lit it and pulled on it hard. He winced as he suffered a bit of discomfort in his throat. He exhaled through his nose and made smoke rings with his mouth. He felt as if a miniature heavy metal guitarist was strumming away beneath his forehead. Hate heavy metal, his inner voice yelled. Shit, no paracetamol or aspirin. Fuck it. Wish I could escape this shit of a life. Wish I could escape my feelings for Juliet and Brianna. It's not easy to let go. Fuck, my head hurts. Maybe Floyd's right. Maybe I need to make a move. Can't take this shit. Can't take Clayton, him playing daddy. Maybe I should just bust him up and accept the prison term. At least in there, I know I can't have Juliet. He toked again. The smoke corkscrewed towards the ceiling. Need to give it another coat of paint before too long, he promised himself. He drifted back in time. Late night smoking sessions in a social services hostel where he had first met Floyd when he was only 16. He could hear the dominoes being slammed on the table during a Rockers game. He could hear Denton Brown thumping out of the boombox of what Floyd called the Brixton suitcase. 3 meals a day, no rent to pay, only the boss is getting paid, and there is no wife to obey. Sitting in a 2x4, looking through an iron door. I could never get used to the smell. I'm talking about detention, detention. I'm talking about detention. He remembered searching his road for cigarette butts. Never could roll a decent spliff. He laughed at himself. Even now, eating corned beef and soggy rice for Christmas dinner. Watching a grainy black and white James Bond on TV on Christmas Day. Getting fucked from special brew and Tennant's beer. Eyeing up girls in tight two-tone skirts and crimpling blouses. Buying a £2 drawer of weed from a dealer who walked through the aisles of the Ace late night cinema. He felt the abrasions, bruises, blows, cuts and stabbings from the street fights he had in his youth. Was that really me? He asked himself. I could have died. Shit. Why was I so reckless? He fingered the scar on his neck. A stark image of his former nemesis, Terry Flynn, grew large in his mind. Brixton tube station, the ticket barriers, the escalator, the fight, Flynn's arm being ripped off by the train, the blood. Maybe I should have let the train kill me rather than kill you, he concluded. My life's been shit since that day. I survived that home. Just about stayed alive in Brixton. Juliet broke me completely. Don't think I ever recover from that. The future ain't bright or fucking orange for people like me. No woman, no children that I can call my own. The women I have relationships with end up hating me. People like me don't have happy endings. Fuck. I just get old and die a fucked up, miserable bastard with a reggae album full of issues. They might as well bury me into Farnaby speaker box and fling it down one of them old mines they tried to keep open back in the day. Poor miners. Arthur fucking Scargill and his fucked up baseball hat. Them things never look good on old white people. Fights for the police. Maggie Ironheart Thatcher. State burial? Yeah. They should give her a state burial, he decided. But make sure she's alive when they fucking do it. His thoughts drifted further back in time to when he was 7 years old, living in that home. I think unlike Paris, or maybe even unlike New York, we have wealth and poverty living jail by jail, side by side. And so now and again, these flare-ups happen outside nightclubs or whatever. And I think the difference between 30 years ago, in 1981, during the Brixton uprising. And the difference of now in 2011 is that youngsters seem to have this availability of guns and hardware that I never saw on the street.
Denton Brown is a sequel, of course, to your first novel, Brixton Rock, which is set in about 1980-81, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And that's kind of the world you're describing, and that was a world you knew intimately. I mean, you were caught up in the riots, weren't you, in Brixton in '81? Yeah. What happened?
What happened? There'd been a build-up of pressure from the police, not just in the early months of 1981, but 1980 also. I mean, I remember a few weeks before the uprising in April, there was increased police patrols. I remember being stopped 3 or 4 times a day. I remember being beaten up in police cells, not just in Brixton police station, but sometimes you were taken to other police stations. Sometimes you weren't even charged. And we always complained, but no one would ever listen to us about the police brutality that was going on.
You say you're beaten up in cells. What would actually happen? What would they do?
Well, basically, they'd have you in what we used to call a beast wagon. They'd beat you up inside that you wasn't allowed to even sit down in these police vans. They used to humiliate you, they used to put their boots on your neck or your head. And if you tried to rise up, they would kick you in the head. And the rusters, I always remember this distinctively, and it's been emitted on a recent BBC4 radio programme, that they used to pull the locks out of the rusters' scouts. That was like a trophy for the police. And so these rusters would be in the cells that they had sores and, you know, all over their scalps. It was horrible to watch. And when you're in a cell in Brixton and you hear the beatings getting closer and closer, I think that was the most terrifying part. And on that first night, there was brutalities in that police station that are familiar with third world countries. You know, it was with really oppressive countries. There was blood on the walls all over the corridors. And the prisoners were all singing By the Rivers of Babylon and Stand Up By Your Rights by Marley. It's quite a lot different now, where I believe a really good cause was this peaceful vigil and protest about another killing of a young black man in Tottenham. Now, there's been over 300 killings of young black men, and up to date, there has not been not one police prosecution. And so we are getting increasingly angry about this and wondering what we can do to counter it, or even to make the police accountable for all this. But unfortunately, it seems that a young element who are angry themselves because the way this government has treated them in regards to tuition fees, educational allowances and so on, and it seems that they're taking a brunt of the deficit.
But to me, the riots were kind of, those kids rioting were just like a personification of the national rage.
Yeah.
You can feel it. If you go around the country and talk to people, there's just a rage in people about what's going on with this government and the cuts. And people say it's too simplistic saying about the cuts, but it isn't actually.
And it's even spreading into the middle classes because their lifestyles are under threat now. And also they have children who are going to these universities, and they're having children who maybe not have the living standards as what they enjoyed. And so I think they're becoming angry also. And I think the government is so detached from this anger. We don't even realise, I don't think they bother going into the local secondary schools and to actually ask young people about the cuts they're making and about the effects that have on youth services. I mean, in Tottenham alone, 75% reduction in youth services. I mean, that's too much for any community to take. And I know the same is in Lambeth also. I do community work in Lambeth for young people. And just like Tottenham, heavy cuts. What are our children going to do in the summer when there's no youth club to go to? You know, all these issues need addressing, and I feel that the government have really attacked the youth of this country, really have, in a most sadistic kind of way.
I mean, we're talking about their rage, but after the Brixton riots, I mean, you were picked up by the police and sent to prison for a while. I mean, were you consumed with rage then?
Yes, I was, because I think many of my generation felt there was no way out. And so we might as well end up in prison because we were getting beaten up on the street anyway. And so we felt, you know, we fight the police, doesn't matter anymore. You know, we lost all manner of hope. And so we didn't mind doing the time, to be honest, as long as we stood up for ourselves.
But ironically, didn't you start to read properly when you were in prison and discover a way out, in fact?
Yes, I did. I had met a Rasta man who was a lot older than myself. And I remember him giving me The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, and that book really changed over my life. Because educational, especially history in our secondary schools in London, is very narrow. You get to learn about Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth I, and for my mind, that was about it. But to be presented a book about a slave revolt in Haiti, which was then called Santo Domingo, maybe you can correct me if I got that name wrong, it just whined in my mind, and I began to gobble up history, as it were, of Africa, of Central America, Southern America, China, and I just got a reading bug, and I became self-educated.
Had you not had that before? You didn't used to read before, really?
Only, I tried to be a DJ. I mean, Brixton, it was a hotbed of lyricists, singers, poets, and so I used to study a lot of lyrics. I mean, to get an edge on a fellow DJ, on the likes of Tipper Irie or Papa Levi or Champion or all these fantastic mic guys, you would listen to the Grateful Dead. You would listen to John Lennon. You would listen to all kinds of music. Jim Morrison, I remember listening to, just trying to get an edge, just trying to get a phrase to take to the dance hall on a Friday or Saturday night, and try to compete with all these fantastic microphone men.
But I mean, as we said, you found a way out through writing. And with a lot of these kids, I mean, to me, a lot of them have, you can see the creativity in them, just by the way they look even, you know. But, you know, they need to find that outlet, and often a creative outlet will do it for them, and they'll put them on the course. How does one do that?
I think we have to think about how we educate our children now in this country, from primary school upwards, because when I go into secondary schools and I'm teaching creative writing classes, I'm teaching 11, 12-year-olds, and they're telling me, Alex, there's no room for me in this society. You know, they have that kind of understanding about how the world runs at that age. They think that they're left out. And so we have to try and counter that by encouraging them. So all kinds of creative skills, I think, are being lost in our school system, and we need to reinsert that, to give them something to hold on to, give them a sense of expression, instead of this dictatorial kind of read this, study this, read this, study this. We have to let them express themselves as well, so they can find what they're good at.
And save themselves.
And save themselves, yeah.